All right, let's continue then on our conversation and our focus we've certainly had throughout the day here on SABC News on the issue of Pit Latrines. And we bring in the National Association of School Governing Bodies, General Secretary Mtakanye Matakanye, on this topic under the promotion of the well-being and effectiveness of the school community with impacts. What impact do Pit Latrines have in enhanced learning and teaching? A very good afternoon to you, Tata Matakanye. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for being with us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon, Flo, and all your listeners.
It's 2021, and we're still talking about pit toilets. I guess we have to admit at this point that there's been a failure on the part of our government to properly address these sort of issues. Is this a clear failure?
It is really, let's put it that way, that it is really a poor failure in the sense that now our government has been in place for the last 27 years. And I think they would have, for these 27 years, concentrated really on the poor schools, on the schools that are in the rural, the deep rural, the working class schools, the poorest of the poor schools, because when you look at this issue of inequality and inhuman, is specifically to schools that are terribly poor, schools that are in the rural, the deep rural, particularly in those rural areas. They are still using those pit toilets. In some instances, they don't even have those pit toilets. They use even the nature. They just go to the nature. And it is really dehumanizing. And it's just that we don't really have ways that they did not, for the last 27 years, concentrate on those schools. Because if we to put this in a context, is that we are from that system that's concentrated on very few schools. And if you go to those very few schools, those schools have got everything. They have got everything. And those schools that I've mentioned, they have been neglected for the last 350 years. So I think our government could have really concentrated seriously on those schools that I've made mention of.
Yeah. I was seeing a story about sort of the private sector coming in some instances to assist some of these schools, and this may come across as insensitive, but is there no way for some of these communities to say, look, the government has failed us, there's nothing more we can say at this point to the government, perhaps looking at other avenues, perhaps other ways of raising money as communities to come together to build, there's people with many skills in some of these villages and communities. Is there no way for the communities themselves to say, this is enough, let's see what we can do at this stage?
You are correct, Flo. And this is what I always say when I appear on a platform like your platform here, that it is time that we improvise. It is time that we have ideas of how do we really support our children, support our schools, support our teachers in school. Because the truth of the matter is that when we still keep on battling with the department, they'll always remind us that now they do not have a budget. Then they will wait for a budget so that they can improve. So we cannot continue bickering with them. So it is in that light that I always say, communities, parents, school governing bodies, let's stand up and start doing things by ourselves, because the truth of the matter, these children, they grow every day, they grow every month. And if we are still waiting for the budget, by the time the budget comes, then these children will have grown men, they will have grown women. So there will be no need for them to go back to school. Right. So time is now. That's what I always talk to the communities, talk to the society, talk to the parents in particular, and school governing bodies. Today, they must have ways of doing things differently, particularly schools that have flow, that have made mention of. It is time. We know that those schools department are referred to them as no-fee schools, but at the same time, those are the schools that are suffering in terms of education.
Dr. Matakanye, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut our conversation short as we have a press briefing to attend. But thank you for giving us your time. I think point well made. Thanks, as always, for giving us your time here on SABC News.